早晨，各位。
Good morning. Welcome to the hearing of the Select Committee to inquire into matters relating to Mr. Timothy Tong's duty visits, entertainment and bestowing a receipt of gifts during his tenure as Commissioner of the Independent Commission Against Corruption. On the 8th of May 2013, Ms. Sid Ho and Mr. Dennis Kwok jointly tabled a petition at the Council meeting in accordance with with Rule 26 of the Rules of Procedure. The petition has been referred to the Select Committee, to the House Committee for consideration, and so this Select Committee is appointed. This is to the purpose of the Select Committee is to inquire into matters relating to Mr. Timothy Tong's duty visits, entertainment, and bestowing a receipt of gifts during his tenure as Commissioner of the Independent Commission Against Corruption, and whether he is upholding the probity values of the ICAC. Now, there are two sessions to the hearing today. The first session is that the former Commissioner, Mr. Timothy Tong, will continue to give evidence. I'd like to welcome Mr. Tong here. The second session is to take evidence from the incumbent Commissioner, Mr. Simon Pei, and also Ms. Julie Mu, and also Mr. Zhao Yang. Now, this Select Committee is not given the powers under the Legislative Council Powers and Privileges Ordinance, Cap 382, Section 9(1). That's why witnesses are not protected by the powers and privileges conferred upon by Cap 382. So I would like to remind the witnesses that for key issues in response to our questions, you deliberately give false evidence or provide false documents with the purpose of covering up from the Select Committee. That is an offense. The Select Committee has already formulated our practice and procedure. If I may remind you of a number of points. First of all, a quorum shall be maintained throughout the hearing. There is I as the chairman plus 4 members. And the Cap 382 applies only to the proceedings of the hearing. All members and other persons shall refrain from commenting on the hearing outside of the hearing. If I may also take this opportunity to remind those in the public gallery and the media that dissemination and disclosure of the evidence given at the hearing outside of the proceedings of the Select Committee is not protected under Cap 382. If necessary, the public or the media should obtain other legal advice as to their legal responsibilities. And in accordance with paragraph 15 of the practice and procedure of the Select Committee, during open hearings, members should only ask questions for the purpose of ascertaining facts relevant to and within the scope of the Select Committee's inquiry. Members should not make comments or statements during these hearings. I shall rule on whether a question or a piece of evidence is relevant to the terms of reference of the Select Committee and is therefore falls within the scope of the hearing. I will also rule on whether the follow-up question is of a similar nature and allow it. And each member will have 10 minutes for questions and answers. The Select Committees agreed that Mr. Timothy Tong be accompanied by others. But if I may remind Mr. Tong, those accompanying you may not address the Select Committee. Now, the first session of the hearing. We want to make the most of the time available, so members, as you ask questions, please be concise and specific. And the witness must also give specific response. At the last hearing, Ms. Sit Ho and Mr. James To have asked to ask questions of the witness, so they will first be allowed to ask questions, and then other members could raise their hands to indicate you wish to ask questions afterwards. Ms. Sit Ho first. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Mr. Tong. If I may review a document with you, ICAC 1. Is also our Select Committee paper 4T1. There are many annexes actually to this paper, and we're grateful to the Secretariat for asking the relevant questions. If I may refer you to Appendix 16. Bracket E 1-3, Roman letter 1-3. It says here it says here if there is any functions organized by the Commissioner, it should be endorsed by the administration branch, or by the Director of Operations. So in endorsing official functions or entertainment, which mechanism is used in giving the endorsement? Would there be papers, documents, or is there a proper meeting? First of all, I would like to thank members for providing the detailed index of papers. I must say that I have read these papers before, but it's only this morning that you give me the index. It's best too if you refer to the page number. For Appendix 16, those are the changes made after I left the post. Now, for major functions, when necessary, declaration will be made. Have you finished? Yes. So you're saying that for major entertainment event, is it for you alone to decide, or are there other colleagues involved? And if it's how do you define what a major or minor entertainment function, so that you could make the decision alone? Based on needs, that means the nature of the entertainment, whether other colleagues may also join the event. As for major functions, they could be discussed at the Commissioner's weekly meeting. For minor events, it depends on needs. Say if there's just one branch involved, then the branch or department colleagues may be consulted. Now for the Commissioner's weekly meeting, the CMW, the CWM. Now in the course of discussion of such functions, apart from the head of operations who would talk to you, would there be others at the meeting, and would they also give comments or advice? The Commissioner's weekly meeting is attended by all heads of departments. the head of the administration branch, that is the is also this assistant director administration is also there. They will all be participating in such discussion. Have there been any divergent views, for instance, major function? We look at records of evidence taken by the Public Accounts Committee, like the function at the Peak Lookout Cafe. There's exceedance of the ceiling, so beverages were counted separately. On such major issues where there are different views, Mr. Tong, on the same item or subject, people may give different views. I could only go by my memory what views were given. But since it's just my recollection, I haven't had a chance to check the meeting records, and from what I could recollect, there were never major differences or dispute. Now, there was one function at the staff canteen of the ICAC building. It was to host a reception for consulates general. There was karaoke singing, there was a beer drinking contest. It was jointly organized with the Foreign Affairs Ministry, but I would say it's inappropriate for the ICAC to host a function like that. It's not in line with its image. But anyway, at your meetings, was there someone who expressed a different opinion, like the head of operations or the heads of department, or was everyone in agreement that it was fine to host a function like that? Mr. Tong, now I, of course, listen very carefully to questions and views of members. Just now what I heard as a view was that certain functions may not be in line with the culture of ICAC. I don't know if that's a question or if that's just a statement. Now I will take your question. Mr. Tong, karaoke singing and beer contest, are those usual activities in ICAC's functions? Mr. Tong? I understand the chairman has reminded members to ask questions only and not make statements. On the function, the question from the member was whether there were different views expressed. From what I could recall, no, I didn't have that impression. Yes, as I pointed out at the beginning of the hearing, we should refrain from making statements or comments on the case. We should focus on asking questions of the witness. Or you could try to seek clarification from the witness. Well, I wasn't going to ask this question, but since Mr. Tong put it this way. Now, karaoke singing, is it a usual activity in ICAC's functions? On the detailed arrangement of ICAC's functions, of course, colleagues would have regard to the nature and the details of the event and make corresponding arrangement. Now, on the details of the program of a particular function, well, there were some reports, but were those reports true? That I wouldn't comment here. Mr. Tong, you said you won't record the details. You couldn't record the details at the commissioner's weekly meeting, but there could be different kinds of details that you may have forgotten. Now, did you recall whether there was a show of hand in support of these functions, or was it the case there was no discussion and then everybody just agreed, or did anyone ever ask any questions or express any views and ask you for explanation, or you had to deal with such views? Mr. Tong, we had meetings on a weekly basis. At every meeting we might discuss various issues, so I really could not recall. I could only say in general, the purpose of the meeting is for the person in charge to brief us on the relevant function, what the arrangement was, and then we had to make time to take part in the event and so on. If members question why I couldn't record the details, but it is really not possible for me to recall all the details of all the discussions, but I know such discussions were recorded. And if as to whether there was any dissenting view, I honestly do not have the impression or could not recall that there was any discussion on dissenting views. And on the timing of the event and so on. So well, sometimes I might say, oh, I'm not free on that day and whatever. This is possible. Now, whether there's any substantial discussion on a particular point, I believe there's also a matter of recollection or impression. Thank you anyway for telling us that the meetings were recorded. But let's say at the meeting, the same views or different views were expressed and there was some substantial or not substantial discussion, then would it be, to you, would it be an effective reminder or even check and balance? Now I'm talking about the foremost senior officers in the Commission. We have over 1,000 staff members. Any views they put forward, I would value greatly or take seriously. Now, my last question for this round, was there ever the need to vote on something after discussion so people could say whether they support or not a certain item? Mr. Tong. Well, if it's about hosting functions, I certainly could not recall ever any voting arrangement. But for other issues, it's possible that we couldn't agree on something in one discussion. Everybody had to go back and think about it, and then we would need to talk about it again. So does it mean that even if there were different views, there would not be official records of the divergent views? Is that the case? Mr. Tong, I think we're talking about two separate issues here. There were minutes of the meetings. Now, it's not a verbatim record, of course. But let's say at a particular meeting there was a discussion, still we could not resolve a particular issue. Then what we'd do is that everybody would go back to think about it more. And then we would, of course, consider also views expressed at the meeting. As I pointed out just now, Mr. Chairman, in my recollection, there was no obvious dissenting views on entertainment matters. Mr. James Toh. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Last time I talked about gifts, gifts could be received either in your official capacity or personal capacity. So there are two different types of capacity. For gifts received in official capacity, last time you said that the matter would be referred to ICAC colleagues. As for gifts received in personal capacity, you could not recall whether there was a detailed record. You said there shouldn't be many in number. Since the last hearing, do you have anything to add to gifts received in your personal capacity? Mr. Tong, on receiving gifts, I'd like to point this out. Now, the ICAC papers have been copied to me. There are many different documents on guidelines on how we should handle gifts received. During my term, and as the member repeated what I said, I did not receive many gifts in my personal capacity. And if I may add a point, in the documents provided by the ICAC, the arrangement is spelled out clearly. If you would just spend a bit more time on the document, it would save us a lot of time in discussion here. Now, what I'm saying that You said there weren't many gifts received in personal capacity. Did you declare all the gifts? Mr. Tong, did you declare all the gifts? There was a guideline given to the Select Committee. For designated officers or prescribed persons, the Chief Executive has issued a guideline. And there it's listed out. No, I'm not asking you to walk us through papers here. No, I'm just saying the answer lies in that document. I'm asking about the fact, not the document. I'm asking you, Mr. Tong, is it in your recollection that for all the gifts you received in your personal capacity, they have been declared?
Mr. Tong, Chairman, my answer is that everything I did was in accordance with the guideline, which is in the bundle. If members don't want to refer to the guideline, well, I will answer from my recollection. I hope that I remember it right. I think it was paragraphs 3 to 7 when it comes to prescribed person. Under certain circumstances, there will be a general approval given. But if it is not under a general approval, and if the person would like to keep the gift, then a declaration has to be made. I think Mr. To's question was to ask for a number. Can you give us the number? Mr. Tong, I cannot supply the number of gifts I have received in my personal capacity. My question was, well, since you cannot give us a number, were they all declared? And my answer is that I did in accordance with the guideline, and in certain circumstances, say for example, gifts given from received from a direct relative, then there is a general approval, so there is no need for declaration. And if I don't want to keep the gifts, there is no issue of the clearance of making a declaration. So that means that if it falls outside the general approval, then you have declared them. Well, you talk about gifts received in a personal capacity, and it's very few in number. How few in number, Mr. Tong? If it's received in my personal capacity and not related to my job, I don't know how it's related or if it's related to the scope of the Select Committee. And I choose to answer anyway. As far as I know, it's a single-digit number. It's just off the top of my head. By that I mean those fall outside the general approval. Yes, outside the general approval. And I refer to those that I have declared to keep. That's off the top of my head. So for the single-digit number of gifts, you have declared them all. Mr. Tong, we're still talking about those that fall outside the general approval. Mr. To, after you have declared them, you may, well, for some that you don't want to keep, you didn't want to keep, you did not want to declare. You would not declare, or you have declared them all. Well, let me try to understand your question. If I did not want to keep the gifts, whether it is under the general approval or not, then there is no problem of asking for approval, since I wasn't going to keep them. So let me try to understand it. You received it and you did not return it, and it is outside the general approval. You said you have declared them all. So does it mean that you have kept all those gifts received? That's why you declared them? Or is it the case that, well, whether you have made the declaration for some gifts you did not keep? Well, I cannot rely solely on my memory because I'm reminded every time that I am not protected by the LCPNP ordinance, but I have read the ICAC documents. In a recent circular of the ICAC, it was pointed out, when I think they were referring to the official capacity. I have made an application, but I did not keep the gift. I'm not asking for your analysis, I was asking for the fact. In fact, were there cases in which you have made a declaration, but you did not keep the gifts? I made a declaration, but it's a declaration of not keeping the gifts. Well, let me try to understand your question. It's a gift. I made an application to keep it, and in the end, I did not keep it. Is that what you mean? Mr. To, can you make yourself clear? Well, for those fall under the general approval, then you don't have to tell the chief executive. For certain circumstances, say for example close relatives, you don't have to declare. But for those outside the general approval, you will have to tell the chief executive. For those that you have told the chief executive, are they those that you have made an application to keep them? Well, yes. If I did not want to keep them, then there is no need for me to make an approval. Is it the case that after I have made an application, even with an approval, I in the end did not keep the gifts? Well, I can only answer from my recollection. And my answer is based on the documents. I have made an application, and for a certain reason I in the end did not keep the gifts. Yes, that has happened. Mr. Tong, there is a distinct difference between your official capacity and your personal capacity. Did you just rely solely on your judgment whether it is related to your official capacity or your personal capacity? I have actually answered your question before. I worked in the commission. Of course, I fully understand the rationale and the importance of Section 3. If I had questions, I would ask advice from the experts, which were abundant in number. Well, was it the case that you have received a certain number of gifts, some in personal capacity, some official capacity? Did you just solely rely on your judgment? Was there ever an occasion when you asked someone for advice? My answer is that if necessary, I asked for advice, and I did. So can you remember how many times and whom did you ask? Oh, it's impossible for me to remember. Is it because there were too many in number, Mr. Tong? Well, there were few, but they were things in the past, so I cannot recall them all. Well, since we're all talking about facts, the fact is, it was by reading the ICAC document that jogged my memory, because we're talking about something that happened in 2008. For those gifts received in your personal capacity, you made an application, a declaration to the chief executive, and it was only single digit in number. And if it's obviously related to your official capacity, there's no need for you to ask someone for advice. And if it is received from your in your personal capacity and it's outside the general approval, you said it's a single digit in number, but you could not remember the reason why you received them. How come, Mr. Tong? I told you I should ask, and I did ask. No, I wasn't asking for the number of times. Well, I was asking just a ballpark figure. Several hundred times, just a single digit number, and of whom? The operations department or the corruption prevention department, CRD. Well, I think it's a single-digit number. It's a few in number. Last time, when the question was asked, my understanding was that it was about the number of times. I cannot remember. It's a single-digit number. And what about? Well, I asked the ADM, the operations administration branch, because they were fully conversant with these matters, and they can give me assistance in dealing with these issues. Since you told us that the number was few, and is it the case that you asked because they were special occasions, or something that is out of the ordinary? And who did you ask? Well, in relation to whether it is a special occasion or there is something odd about it, if I asked, it was a special occasion when someone gave me a gift. And it seems from the ordinance that is general in nature, but it's not sure, so I had to seek clarification. Well, it's not just the commissioner. Anyone will have to be certain about it. It's just to be on the safe side when you ask for advice. Mr. Dennis Kwok. Thank you, Chairman. I would like to focus my questions on what happened in 2011. On the 8th of September, you, as the Commissioner of the ICAC, held a dinner. And members of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs were involved as well. Whose idea was it? Who first suggested the dinner? You or someone else? Mr. Tong. The 8th of September. In relation to this event, well, for some specific details, say for example the date, I cannot recall, but since there was a press report, so I take that as it is. About the idea. During my term, every year there was an occasion when we receive diplomats. And that's a practice that took place every day. Well, is it the case that it involves members of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and there was catering involved? What about these event? I would like to declare that it's a large-scale event. Please don't beat about the bush. Is it the Ministry of Affairs sent 5 chefs to provide catering service at the ICAC, yes or no? Mr. Tong, please answer. Well, I will give you 2 points, and it will answer you. It may not be the answer you would like to hear, though. This is a large-scale event involving several dozens of countries and the representatives of the highest level, and everything was under the sun, and there was also representative from the mainland authority. And I've read the ICAC paper. The Commissioner's document to the Select Committee states to the effect that this large-scale event may involve ICAC investigations, and as a result, details cannot be divulged. And that's why I think it's not appropriate for me to divulge details. Mr. Kwok's question was whether you would give a brief answer to the question. Well, that brings me to my second point. Since there was no details given by the ICAC is not appropriate for me to provide the details. Mr. Kwok, I have a simple question to you. Did the Ministry of Foreign Affairs send 5 chefs to provide catering service at the ICAC? You refused to answer. And as a result, did the ICAC give the fees for the service at market rate to the 5 chefs or the Ministry of Foreign Affairs? Well, Mr. Tong, my question was still the 2 points I made. Everything was open and above board. Was open and under, and I did not hide anything, and it was an annual event. If that is the case, why couldn't you answer me? Mr. Tong, can you elaborate on your answer? Well, my question was very easy. Well, did the ministry send 5 chefs over, and did you give them back the fees for the service at market rate? Well, everything was above board, and everything was recorded. I believed that questions being asked, and will be asked, relate to all the records, but I don't have the records. The answers to these questions will be on the records, but I do not have the records. And my answer was that since details were not given in the record, it's inappropriate for me to give such details. On the 8th of September 2011, the ICAC spent about $60,000 on that dinner. Compared to previous dinners, it was several times higher. Why was there the need for this event? And in the past, these events were organized at a much lower cost. How come on that occasion so much was spent? I heard the member's question, and I would like to seek advice from my advisors and see if I need to supplement on top of the 2 points I made. May I? Yes, you'll be given time to do so. Mr. Tong, please continue. Thank you for the time. I don't have anything to add. Mr. Kwok, what does it mean? Well, his answer was that he had nothing to add. So the cost per head, which was 1,200, 1.6 times the limit. Do you think that it was reasonable? Well, my second point. Everything was on the record, and I do not have the record. Well, you can find the answers in the record, and I am answering your question. Please give me time. The person who keep the record do not provide the details. I am a witness. I don't have the record. I cannot verify the accuracy of the press report. So I do not have anything to add.
I also like to point out that right now the ICAC and the police, I think we've put the same questions to them, and the police has declined to answer the question. That is correct. Chairman, I understand. So I hope that you should note that the witness had already refused to answer the question on several occasions. I'm sure the public has also heard that. If the witness chooses not to answer the questions, of course that is his prerogative. But I hope that the public will see that the witness has chosen not to answer the questions that we've put to him, and the public can and we can leave it to the public to make the judgment. Chairman, if you will allow me 2 more minutes. Chairman, on the 8th of September 2011, when the 5 chefs came to the ICAC office to provide catering services, did the ICAC pay them for the food materials that they brought along? Mr. Tong, regarding that particular details of that particular function, I believe it's all in the records. The organization that I named, the ICAC, which keeps such records, chooses not to provide such information to the committee, then I wouldn't be able to comment. Mr. Kwok, I'm not asking you about the details of what happened that evening. My question is that at the time, if the ICAC accepted the service provided by those 5 chefs and you didn't pay them, and you've also accepted the food materials that they brought along and you didn't pay them, would that be an acceptance of benefit? Chairman, regarding what happened that evening, everything was recorded. I'm sure the records will explain everything. But this time, members have raised the issue of the acceptance of advantage. I understand. Well, I've actually read some reports as to whether or not there have been any transfer of advantages. I don't understand why there is this query. Why is it that you don't understand? Mr. Tong, could you explain why you hold that view? I don't see how an event that is unorganized, in the open and attended by many people, and I think for events of such nature, it should have been preceded by a thorough discussion. If the discussion involved major matters of principles, somebody must have raised the issue. So I don't see any advantage being involved. Chairman, my final question, Mr. Kwok. Mr. Tong, I don't understand why you keep repeating, saying that the function is held, under the bright sunlight. When I ask you the question, you repeat the same thing. You say everything was done openly and there is nothing to hide. Then why is it that you're not answering my question? Chairman, I've heard members saying that I obviously remembered. Of course, I have some recollection of certain events, but I don't think I would be able to recall all the details, and some of the details I didn't even know about. The answer I gave, I think it's not that I choose to repeat the same answers, but it's just that the question has been asked repeatedly, and also the records are not in my hands. Chairman, I'd like to ask the same question. Well, this is a report which was published in the press 3 weeks ago. Apparently, Mr. Tong is still refusing to give us an answer. So let me ask a simpler question, a question that has to do with the framework. Now, Mr. Tong told us that those records are with the ICAC, and the ICC is refusing to provide such records. However, if in the end the ICC agrees to supply such records, will Mr. Tong be willing to answer the questions put to him by Mr. Kwok? Mr. Tong. Chairman, I think that is a hypothetical question. However, if I see the records, if I'm aware of the details, then I will be in a better position to judge whether I'll be able to answer members' questions. Mr. Chung, well, for such events, would you organize them every year, Mr. Tong? Such as inviting the consuls from different, the personnel from different consular offices. I think records are more reliable than recollections. According to the ICC's papers, such events were staged every year. So, Chairman, would the Commissioner also take part in the decision to organize such events, Mr. Tong? For major functions, such as, a function that involves the consular officers consular officials from so many countries, obviously it would have been raised at the weekly meeting chaired by the Commissioner. So the Commissioner was the convener of that meeting. So regarding the details and the scope of that event, and was a decision made by the Commissioner during those weekly meetings? At such weekly meetings, what were the details discussed? There's no way for me to remember them, but basically, whenever there were major events, they would be discussed. As to how the decision was finally arrived at, I wouldn't be able to give you the details. Because many things were discussed. If you ask me about details of a single event, if that weekly meeting only discussed details regarding a single event, that would not be possible. So, Mr. Tong, you play a leading role because you chair that weekly meeting. At least you should be the person in charge. Is that what you mean, Mr. Chung? Yes. Well, my answer is yes. I may not know the details, but I was the person, chairing the discussion. So, were the details dealt with by some, other committees, which help? According to recollection, that was not the case, but I'm not 100% sure. But even if such meetings were held, I don't think I needed to attend those meetings. Well, Chairman, for such a major function, and you invited several dozen consuls from various countries, I think you should have a preparatory committee to work on that. It's not like inviting a few friends to a dinner in a restaurant. I'm sure. You must have set up a committee to make the preparation so that you would ensure that it was everything was properly organized. Chairman, I don't know whether or not it is because LegCo has many committees. According to my recollection, I don't think we had something like a preparatory committee, but I think, but I agree that colleagues must have discussed the preparation. But I'm not sure whether a preparatory committee or a committee of a similar nature was set up. I believe to organize such a major event, it wasn't something that could be handled by one or two colleagues. I also like to add, and I'm not referring to any particular function, but for a major function like this one, I believe all directorate staff, colleagues who are at the directorate grade would participate, because we were promoting the working relationship between the ICAC and the consular officers of several dozen countries. But eventually someone will have to decide on the procedures for the dinner and what was going to be served. So which directorate staff would make that decision? Mr. Tong, the IC has a framework or a department. I mean, for events like this, which department would be responsible? Could you provide us with sufficient information? Mr. Tong, is that what you're asking? Yes. Mr. Tong. I think, Chairman, I think the way, since you put the question so clearly, I'll be able to answer your question. For such major events involving foreign consular officers, the best way to deal with it would be I think the Community Relations Department would obviously have participated, but it might not only be just involve one single department. They must have involved other departments. As to how it was prepared, whether we set up a working group or a preparatory committee, that I cannot be sure. Let's say this was, undertaken by the Community Relations Department and so on. Eventually, would they need to report to the Commissioner? For major functions, I think the Commissioner would be informed of the relevant arrangements. Was it yourself, Mr. Tong? Mr. Tong, at the time, did you know about the details, and did you also make that decision? I think I'm talking about, events in general. No, I'm not referring to a particular function. I would know of any major functions, and if I had not raised any objection, then the event would proceed. Mr. Chung. So I think this should be a major event, and the Commissioner should have known at the time about the details and who was responsible for preparing the dishes, what were being served at the dinner, and so on. Mr. Tong, I've heard the Chairman and members asking a general question. For general questions of a general nature as to who would do what, and I may not know, but I still maintain the same point. That is, in respect of this event, there have been records, full records are kept for that function, and the organization keeping those records is refusing to provide the information, and therefore I think it's not appropriate for me to comment. Of course, in general, that is the case, but for such a major function, the Commissioner must have known about the details at the time. So, well, I don't have any further questions for the moment, Chairman. Mr. Kenneth Chan. Thank you. I'd like to follow up on my questions regarding this function held on the 8th of September 2011. I'd like to ask a few questions regarding matters of principle. According to recollection, have you organized similar functions before 2011? Chairman. When I answered the Chairman's question, Chairman, will you please ask Mr. Tong to simply give me a yes or no answer? I don't think he need to bother with the superfluous trivialities. Mr. Tong, I hope you would listen to members' questions and answer them. Chairman, I think I have already answered the question. According to the record provided by the ICAC, such receptions were held every year. So they were held every year. So before you became the Commissioner, such events were also staged. Yeah, Chairman, what I'm saying is based on ICC records. And if I remember correctly, and I invite members to go to the records, I think the records provided by the ICC started, I think, from 2007 and 8, and earlier than that, no such records were maintained. So I therefore cannot answer questions in relation to the time before that period. So you say that such events have been organized before. Now, do you think that the staging of such organizations is commensurate with the terms of reference of the ICAC? You're talking about consuls, and you're not talking about, your counterparts, namely corruption prevention organizations in other jurisdictions. Do you think such functions should be staged every year? I believe that, maintaining a relationship with the foreign consular officers is part of my duties. So I don't know what role you are playing. You're saying that maintaining a relationship with foreign consular officers is part of your duties. Mr. Tong, have you ever eaten at the ICAC canteen or restaurant, or have you never bothered to do that? Chairman, may I invite the chairman to give me some guidance, or I withdraw that. Have you ever eaten at the ICAC canteen during your term as commissioner? The answer is yes. Does the ICAC canteen retain its own chefs and staff which were employed by the ICAC, or was everything outsourced? Well, the ICAC, the management of the ICAC canteen, according to my understanding, was undertaken by a management committee. There were specific arrangements. Providing catering services. If I may also add that very often I would have my lunch at the ICAC canteen. So you are familiar with the operations of that canteen. So to which department does that management committee belong? I didn't know anything about the management of the ICAC canteen. So, Chairman, I didn't ask him the question. I was only asking, the management committee you refer to, was it part of any department within the ICAC, or was it directly accountable to you? I think this is a general question. I think the question is a very clear one. Mr. Tong, the structure, I don't want to explain the structure of the management committee based on my recollection. It has its own articles of association or constitution. Well, I'm only, saying this based on my own recollection. That management committee has its should have a chairman. As to how it works and what was the relationship with the commissioner. Obviously, there would have been opportunities for them to consult with me, but I personally did not participate in the activities of that management committee. I can only say that the ICAC has a staff association. The correct name I cannot recall, but it is related to that management committee. So, is that management committee directly responsible to you, or? Well, yeah, it was responsible, accountable to that management committee. So could we ask the ICAC to give us such information? Mr. Tong?
Mr. Tong, let me continue with my questions. You said this is an annual event, and every time, from your recollection or impression, these events would be discussed at the weekly meetings. Is that correct? From your recollection or impression? Yes, the weekly committee should have discussed such events. Now, for those attending the weekly meeting, they included you and the 4 heads of department. Is that correct? Yes, more or less 3 heads of the department. The administration branch. The administration branch is not a department. Now, you've been the commissioner for a long time. You must have had over several hundred meetings. From your recollection or impression, at these weekly committees, were you just there to give directives, or was there genuine discussion of issues? And did any subordinates ever, object to your or challenge your decisions? Mr. Tong, now I've already spoken on the same subject. The weekly meetings, now that's the Deputy Commissioner, the two heads of department, and the administration branch head. They were all at the weekly committees. I attach great importance to the weekly meeting. It should not be, and it was not a place where I had all to say. It's for the purpose of discussion among colleagues. That's the purpose of the weekly meetings. Mr. Lau? Thank you. Mr. Tong, you said there was discussion. In 2009, from 2009 to 2011, you held this gathering with Consul General. How come in 2011 all of a sudden you decided to make it a bigger event? Could you recall the reasons for that? For the 2011 event and the relevant details, I have to go back to the second point I already mentioned. For parties keeping the records, including the organization keeping the records of the weekly meetings, they would not supply the records, so I am not in no position to comment. 2009, 2011 weekly meetings records on such gatherings. Now you talk about the organization that keeps the records, and the organization that keeps records of the 2011 event. Are you talking about the same organization, ICC? Is it the same organization before 2011 and in 2011? Mr. Tong, well, if you've read the ICAC documents, of course it's the same organization. That's the ICAC. The relevant documents should be dated in the latter half of February. I think members asked for the ICAC to provide information on functions hosted for Consul General by Timothy Tong, but I think the ICAC came back to say it's inappropriate for them to provide the records. Now there are four major departments under ICAC. Which department may keep the records? Do you know? It doesn't matter which department keeps the records. The person in charge is the commissioner. Now, as to who actually keep the documents depends on the nature of the functions. But probably the major documents or records should be kept by the administration branch. Yes, the administration branch that reports to you. Okay. And one other point, Mr. Tong, you said it's part of your job to stay in contact with Consuls General. That's your personal view. But can I ask why this is part of your job? Can you elaborate, please? In your opinion, why do you think this is part of your job? Mr. Tong, can you elaborate on your views? Yes, I just want Mr. Tong's own views, personal views. Yes, Mr. Tong, please. How is it related to your work? External cooperation. The ICAC is an independent organization, and external cooperation is an important aspect of the ICAC's work. In 2006 to 7, in that annual report, and that was before I became the commissioner. At that time, the incumbent commissioner already explained the importance of external cooperation in the annual report, 2006 to 7. And then ICAC also provided documents to the Public Accounts Committee is a JEN document. In that document, it also explains the importance of external cooperation in relation to law enforcement and other aspects. I share the same view. Take the example of Consuls General. Contact with Consuls General is not just limited to once a year. Of course, Consuls General would not be directly involved in investigation and law enforcement, but they represent their countries. So Consulates General are an important organization with which the ICAC work. Next, Mr. James Toh. Mr. Tong, can I refer you to TI for ICAC bracket C. Annex 3. Yes, please continue. Page, please, page number. Page 23, that's the Chinese version. Yes, Mr. Toh, have you found it? Good. Now this is from the ICAC. It says that in 2007 to 2008, or from 2007 to 2008 to 2012 to 2013, you've applied to the Chief Executive to keep certain gifts. Here is a record. It says here, ICAC has checked and there were 2 such occasions, but both occasions were in August 2008. 2 occasions here, as you can see. The one was the opening ceremony of the Olympic Games. The other was to do with the equestrian competition of the Olympic Games held in Hong Kong. Now, apart from these 2 cases, do you recall having made any other applications? I could only repeat this point, that it's from my recollection. But I believe in the records of the ICAC. For I think for these applications, they were made in my capacity, official capacity as commissioner. But other than that, I shouldn't think there should be more such cases. Well, this is the ICAC record. I hope you would think about it carefully. You have been the commissioner. You were the commissioner for more than 6 years. But in the first year, in August 2008, there were 2 such applications. But 2009, 2010, all the way up to the end of your tenure, according to the ICAC's records, you never made other applications. So was it the case that there were no such applications, or rather that you did receive gifts but you did not, that means you did retain gifts but you did not apply? Or for whatever reason, in the next few years you chose not to keep any gift, that's why you never made any application. So I just want to confirm with you what your recollection is. Mr. Tong, several points. I haven't been a commissioner for more than 6, I did not serve as a commissioner for some 6 years. That's the first point. Second point, if the record says so, that record should tally with my memory. As the commissioner, and in my official capacity, I applied to the CE. Well, I don't think there were other applications. Is it true that I only made the applications at the beginning of my tenure and then I stopped doing so? Well, the public could not see it, but of course the members have access to the documents provided by the ICAC. Now, in 2007 to 8, yes, I did make applications to the CE. But actually, even after I received the approval, I did not keep the gifts. and then I didn't apply after that, and because I did not receive any gifts, so that's the usual approach. Now the Supreme People's Procuratorate invited you and your daughter to the opening ceremony of the Olympic Games, including admission fees and the hotel accommodation. It's just not that you didn't want to keep the gift just because you were busy, so you ended up not accepting the invitation. You had wanted to accept the invitation, right? Can you please look at this again? Annex 3, page 23, Annex 3. It's in the ICC's record. On 2 occasions, you applied to the Chief Executive to receive the following gifts in the capacity of the Commissioner. One was the one just mentioned, that is the Supreme People's Procuratorate invited you to attend the opening ceremony of the 2008 Olympic Games on the 8th of August. And then the other one was 4 admission tickets given to you by the Jockey Club to the equestrian games of the Olympic Games. Yeah, just now the member's question was that I applied and I did not go to Beijing. Eventually, the reason was because it could not be arranged. Is that what you said? No. The way you put it, as if even you've applied, you chose not to accept the gift. Well, the Chief Executive has given you permission to accept the invitation to the Olympics Games opening ceremony in Beijing. It's just that you did not go, but all along you had wanted to receive the gift. Otherwise, you wouldn't apply, right? Mr. Tong? So you just wanted to see whether you could apply, you would get the approval, then you and then it didn't mean you wanted to go. Is that what you say? Now I see why the member said so. Looking at the document, originally I had wanted to go to Beijing, but that doesn't mean that I would go. But then subsequently there were difficulties with making the arrangement and so on. Now, if I were desperate to go, of course I could have worked on those difficulties, because it wasn't a long trip. I'm not going to argue with you whether you had wanted to go from the beginning, but of course I would say if you had bothered to make the application, that must mean you had wanted to go. Otherwise, you wouldn't. It wouldn't make sense. Now, anyway, for the August opening ceremony of the Olympic Games, the CE gave you approval. At the end, Mr. Tong did not attend, but what about your daughter? Did she go? Now, I would like to seek your advice, Mr. Chairman. And I come here to assist the inquiry of the Select Committee in because of my official capacity. So I would like to keep my family members out of this as far as possible. It doesn't mean that even if there's a need, I wouldn't mention anything, but I hope members would be a bit more considerate. You and a family member, it would be better. A family member. I hope you would put it that way. A family member, that's all I'm asking. Mr. Chairman, members, I hope you do appreciate that's how I look at family members. Mr. Chairman, if you think I should answer this question, I will answer it. Let me explain why I'm asking this question. I just want to see what your thinking is. Because in the application, you said, why did you apply to the CE? Because you said the Supreme People's Procuratorate had a good working relationship with the ICC. So you did not go. If your daughter also did not go, then it's fine. But if your daughter chose to go, does it mean that she was to go on your behalf to work on relationship with the Supreme People's Procuratorate? That's why I asked about the final arrangement, because you did make an application. Now, Mr. Tong said that he didn't want specific persons to be involved, but maybe you could rephrase your question, you and your family member. Would it be better? Can you accept that as a family member? I asked whether his daughter went, because here it said Mr. Tong did not attend the ceremony. You did not attend the ceremony, did you not? Mr. Tong, my request is simple. Can we just use the term family member and not mention names? And then I'll answer the question. So is it the case originally the application was for you and daughter, but then eventually you changed it to someone else? I think that's important, because you didn't go and someone else went. But then how could that person work on better relationship with the Supreme People's Procuratorate? Mr. Tong, member, did not agree to your request because in the document there's mention of your daughter. So it's up to you to decide whether you want to answer the question. The way I see it, even if he is to retract this question, it doesn't mean that we don't know about this. No, I insist on asking this question because it's relevant. It's directly relevant. Yes, I've already put forward that position to Mr. Tong. Now let Mr. Tong answer the question. Mr. Tong, Chairman, just like was a request, was not conditioned. No, she did not go. Second application, that is admission tickets given by the Hong Kong Jockey Club to the equestrian competition of the Olympics game, 4 tickets in total, 2 for the 15th and 2 for the 21st of August. But you withdrew the application. At the time before the CE approved the application, you withdrew it. So perhaps I could put it straight to you. The first time you applied to go to Beijing, you ended up not going. Your family member did not go either. The second application, you withdrew the application before the CE even approved it. Maybe you were worried that the CE might not approve it. That's why you withdrew the application first. And then thereafter, for so many years, you never made another application. So perhaps there were other occasions. Perhaps you should have made an application, but you thought, oh, it's so much bother. Let's not do it. Because after 2007, 2008, all the way up to 2013, you've given all the connections you have, you've given all the good friends you have, given such a strong need for you to maintain working relationships, because in your application that's what you said. But then eventually somehow there's no need to maintain any more working relationships, or no one ever invited you again to anything, or just that there were such invitations, just that you did not bother to make further applications. Is that the case? Mr. Tong, well, there's speculation, and behind the speculation, it seems that there are doubts or queries. I'd like to answer the question, but on acceptance of advantage, I know that there could be sensitive. Mr. Chairman, can I please be allowed time to seek legal advice again? Yes, I'll grant your request. Yes, Mr. Tong. Mr. Chairman, Annex 3 admission tickets given by the Hong Kong Jockey Club to myself and a family member to the equestrian competition of the Olympic Games, I did start the application. I'd like to clarify that I did not ask for the tickets, but rather the Jockey Club proposed to give me the tickets. When I made the application, I was interested. I had the intention to attend the event. I did end up going, but eventually I bought my own tickets. I didn't want to go into the details, but since there was such a query, I think I need to clarify this for myself. At the time, these were popular events. I wasn't. There was a question whether the tickets could be bought, but I did apply to buy the tickets. I managed to get a ticket, so there was no need for me to accept this invitation. That's why I withdrew the application. And on the first point, the first item, the Supreme People's Procurator's invitation to the then Commissioner. If I may refer you to page 25, the appendix to the Annex 3. At the time, I wrote to the CE, I said that the same invitation was also extended to, the name was redacted, so it was also extended to another person and his family. So there's such a record in the document. If you agree or if you do not have objection, then I will seek your approval for accepting the offer. That's what I said in the letter. That means there were other such invitations to someone in the department.
Just one more question. I'd like to say to Mr. Tong, well, I don't understand 2 points you've made. Please give me an explanation. You said that you would rather buy the tickets yourself. Why did you, through your secretary Judy Lee, said to a colleague in the chief executive that
unable to make it to EQ 08 and EQ 13 we went on 15 and 21st of August 2008. 即係其實你嘅意思係你係因為有第二啲嘢去唔到啊嘛。
So that means you were otherwise engaged. That's why you could not attend. Why didn't you tell him that, well, I wanted to buy the tickets because I thought it was more appropriate? At the time of the application, you said it was in the interest of the Commission to attend the event. I don't understand why the ICAC's attendance to an equestrian event will be in the interest of the Commission. Can you tell me, Mr. Tong? The proposal of the Jockey Club to give tickets to the ICAC, as I said, was not my idea. The Jockey Club was one of the working organizations of the ICAC. Apart from this event, on more than an occasion, I myself met with the CEO of the Jockey Club to discuss about work. You may recall why the ICAC is in some ways working with the Jockey Club, that the latter is a working organization with a partner organization with the ICAC. I don't know why there was this saying. I can only say that very often when my colleagues were working or doing things for me, it might be done without my knowledge. I may not know about it. Well, as to the fact that I had bought tickets, that itself is a fact. And the saying to the Chief Executive's office that I was otherwise engaged, Well, it wasn't on the record, and I believe that it did not go through me. You made the application on the 1st of August. On the 12th, before you withdrew the application, it was not approved, but the event took place on the 15th. Is it the case that you were worried that your application would not be approved by the chief executive? You did not want to beg, and you wanted to go, so in the end you had to buy tickets, and you bought tickets. That's why you had to withdraw the application, and you have to explain to the chief executive. And you got the idea that, well, perhaps the chief executive was quite stringent when it comes to such approvals. That's why for a number of years you did not apply. Please do not speculate, but this is a reasonable inference. I have to give the opportunity to the witness to rebut me. Let's look at the facts. Application was made on the 1st, and the event took place on the 15th, and on the 12th the application was withdrawn, and it was before the application was approved. So without an approval he would not be able to go. That's why he bought tickets. What's your question? Was that what happened, Mr. Tong? What I heard from the member was that this is a reasonable inference, and I was asked of my view. And my view is that this is an unreasonable speculation. And as to when the chief executive approved the application, there was a procedure. If it was time for the application to be decided, I believe that the colleagues would remind the chief executive. And about the time of application, etc. Well, I was asked of my view. I think it's the case that you're already biased. That's why you are trying to find collaboration to prove your what you think in to prove your point. On the 12th, Judy Lee did not receive the approval. That's why you had to withdraw the application. I think it was more unreasonable. No, but you took the initiative to do that. Well, please speak when I say you can. Well, I spoke with your approval, but I was interrupted. You did not stop him. I have the right to speak. Well, I was speaking and I was interrupted. If you refer to the verbatim record, if there was a time constraint, then there is a system for the chief executive to be reminded. Such an inference or speculation was unfounded, and it was merely an expression of personal views of the member. It wasn't a question. And I'd like to say that query of a public official to accept advantage or doing so illegitimately is a very serious allegation, and in my opinion such allegations should not be made lightly. What I can say is that I act in accordance with guidelines and rules. If I have acted inappropriately when it comes to gifts, whether it is in my personal or official capacity, you must know that it can be pursued by legal proceedings. Ms. Sit-Ho, I would like to ask questions about the dinner event with Consulate General and Ministry of Foreign Affairs with the Commissioner of the ICAC, where there was a beer contest. Do you agree, Mr. Tong, that that dinner was an official event, since you said that it was done over a number of years? Mr. Tong, when it comes to receiving and treating consulates general, it is an official event. Well, is it unusual practice to have karaoke and beer contests in these events? Mr. Tong. If the member was here all along, listening to the testimony of the witness, he or she might recall that repeatedly the witness said that when it comes to the details of the event, since the keeper of the record, i.e. the ICAC, did not provide the details, the witness is of the view that it's inappropriate for the witness to comment. Well, I only ask for Mr. Tong's views. Well, in an official event, is it common to have karaoke and beer contest? And in his opinion, is it appropriate? Well, it is a question that can be answered by anyone who is the commissioner. If the question is not related to the event that evening, I think I can answer it. But if it is related to that event, it's not appropriate for me to comment. Perhaps I will put it this way. Well, in your opinion, when it comes to ICAC events, where there are karaoke and beer contests, is it appropriate? Are they allowed? Mr. Tong? Chairman, you have now put it to this level. Let me say this. From my recollection, I don't rule out the possibility that there were similar events in the ICAC canteen. Having said that, it doesn't mean that in a specific occasion that there was a karaoke, because they are two separate matters. In that venue, I remember that there were similar. Well, by that I mean the beer drinking. So similar events. Is it just a staff function or official event? I cannot give an across-the-board answer. And off the top of my head, I cannot be sure about what I remember. In my recollection, there were such events. My question was, as the commissioner or just a layman, in an official event involving consulates general where there were karaoke and beer contest, was it appropriate? And whether it is how it's compared to other similar events is not directly related. I just asked for his opinion. I think the member's question is related to this particular event, and it's not a general question. Sorry, Chairman. May I interrupt? Because I have to clarify. It's related to this particular event, and is also general question related to official events. Mr. Tong has been circumventing? Well, has not answered questions related to this particular event involving consulates general. He said that since the ICAC did not provide the details, it's not appropriate for him to answer. Perhaps you can answer a question that is not related to this particular event. So, well, when it comes to official events or functions, karaoke and beer contests allowed? Or were they allowed? Well, okay, let's hear from Mr. Tong. When he was commissioner, would he approve a karaoke and a beer contest in an official function? Mr. Tong. If the event required my approval, it depending on the nature of the function and whether these activities would be beneficial. Of course, should it require my approval, and if such activities would be beneficial to the functions, yes, I would approve it. And I think the public will decide whether it's appropriate to have beer contests and karaoke activities. And I think there was a strong reaction from the public in general, not just about these karaoke and beer contests, also the expenditure on meals and beverage and functions. Well, when I asked whether there was dissenting views during the commissioners' weekly meetings, he said that there was no substantial discussion, and it was quite subjective to say so because there was no negation, but since there was no substantial discussion, he could not remember. And Mr. Tong said that there was a record from the ICAC. Of course, the ICAC will keep checking the record, but I would like to ask for the views of Mr. Tong. If the discussion was not substantial enough to lead to make you remember, is it the case that the discussion was not substantial enough because there was a public view, a very obvious public view about these events and the expenditure? And Mr. Tong, your views on such things are very different from that of the public. And when you say that there was no substantial discussion, well, is it the case that these discussions are not strong enough to serve as an alert to you? Or is it the case that you chose not to hear the dissenting views? Or since these discussions are not strong enough to leave an impression, then you just acted and said what you did and said. There are a number of points involved in the members' comments. First, the entertainment in 2011 and the overall entertainment functions were lumped together. You have to listen to the record carefully or refer to the verbatim record. And the member mentioned on 3 occasions about public opinion, and in the end arrived at the conclusion that there was a marked difference between the view of the public and that of mine. I think you will have to refer to the record. And about a substantial discussion, when I mentioned that, I refer to the Commissioners' weekly meeting. When I said a substantial discussion, I was referring to that function. I hope that it will not be lumped together with entertainment, that there were discussions on entertainment. Number 3, my third point. If it was said that if the discussion was not substantial, then I did not attach importance to it. That would not happen. Why? Because those who attended the meetings were senior members of the ICAC, and they were very experienced. If they held a dissenting view, I believe that no one, including the commissioner, could stop them from speaking because these attendees would not be where they were if they were not experienced enough. And on top of that, they were conversant with the guidelines of the ICAC. They were impartial and fair, and they would not have their views influenced simply because the commissioner held a different view and refrained from voicing their opinion. If there are members in the queue, I would like to let other members go first, but I have other questions. Mr. Porter, a few questions about facts. First, Mr. Tong, during your term, were there 5 times when you entertained consulate generals of a number of countries? According to the record, supplemented by my memory, during my term, yes, and out of which 4 of them were were lunches. Mr. Tong, well, I remember that. And as I said about my second point, I will not comment.
On the 5th occasion, that is on the 8th of September 2011, it was a dinner reception. Mr. Tong. Well, my answer will stay the same. The 4 earlier occasions, the lunch reception, the per capita consumption was about $200 to $300. Chairman, in the absence of any records on hand, I wouldn't be able to answer the question. And again, as I said earlier, and I'd like to reiterate again, since members always refer to public perception, I believe members would know that the committee has already made inquiries with the ICAC, and the ICAC has answered and said that they will not provide the record. I think the per capita expenditure for the last function was $1,200. I think the member has already answered the question for me. On the 8th of September 2011, that was the only dinner reception where the expenditure was rather large, and there were 2 events, a mock golf tournament, karaoke singing, and a beer contest. Mr. Tong. I'll maintain the same answer, Chairman. On that evening, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs actually, seconded 5 of the chefs to provide catering service. Mr. Chair, why don't you continue and put your question to Mr. Tong? I would like a positive answer. If he doesn't give an answer, that is tantamount to an answer already. These are questions of facts. You don't need to rely on the facts, the records. He's certainly capable of giving an answer. But if you say that the ICC refuses to answer the question and therefore he refused to answer the question, that is not an acceptable answer. But, well, given that the ICAC is not providing such information, therefore he chooses not to answer the question. And I think he's repeated the same point many times. I'm giving the opportunity to keep repeating that. My question is a simple one. It's, Mr. Tong, Mr. Chair, the 5 chefs seconded from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, could you answer my question? I've already answered the question. My position is consistent, and I can say this once more. You don't need to do that. What I need to add is that it's not that I don't want to answer the question, but the event, there are records for that event, but the records are not with myself. The organization keeping those records is not supplying such records. And they've also mentioned that this is related to the ongoing investigation. As a witness, it's not appropriate for me to answer that question. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Regarding the arrangement, the administration branch, I think a senior and middle-level colleague can actually raise an objection. Is that right? Mr. Tong. Chairman, if we're talking about reply in response to the ICAC weekly meeting, then I think that is relevant. I don't have anything to supplement, but as the chairman pointed out earlier, and you repeated it many times already, through you, Chairman, I like to tell members that you don't need to give me so many opportunities to answer the same question again and again. Regarding the service and the food provided, did the ICAC pay any fees to any organization providing such service or food materials? Mr. Tong. I mean, I'll stick with the same answer. Mr. Chair, other than the function in the evening in question, have you on many occasions hosted Mr. Lee Sen-hwa from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs? I've heard the question. And it's separate from the question Mr. Chair asked earlier. It's not the same. Mr. Chair, could you confirm whether your question relating to Mr. Lee Sen-hwa is not related to the dinner reception? Yes. Well, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Mr. Lui are working partners at the liaison office. At the working level, I have had entertainments and hosted receptions for the staff of the liaison office and the commissioner. But I cannot remember the number of times. Mr. Chair, we've heard many times Mr. Tong telling us that because the relevant departments are not providing the information, therefore you're not able to answer our question. I've heard that many times. Now, if not for that reason, Mr. Tong, can you give an answer based on your own recollection? Mr. Tong. I think the members have heard this many times because the same question has been put many times, and the answer is the same. If not for that reason, would I have answered the question? Well, that would depend on the nature of the question and whether it would involve, in my opinion, things that I need to, abstain from giving an answer. For example, if it involves the investigation which is ongoing at the ICAC. The second point I made earlier on was about this, and the ICAC had also indicated they cannot provide the materials, and they've also supplied the reasons why. Mr. Chair, if I remember correctly, when you responded to Mr. Kwok's question, you've said that the activities and the arrangements were done in bright daylight. And you've also said that you don't think such arrangements were in contravention of any of the rules and regulations of the ICAC. Yes. Well, in that case, based on recollection, things which have happened, under broad daylight, why are you still refusing to answer our question? I think you're giving me an opportunity to repeat the second point that I've made. That is, If the organization which has possession of such information is not supplying such information as evidence, then I don't think it's appropriate for me to answer your question. I'm not asking whether you know or whether you agree that the organization made the decision not to provide such information. I'm just asking about I'm asking you to answer the question based on the recollection. That was the only dinner reception, probably the most important dinner reception before you retired. Would you agree? Whether or not it was the final and the most important dinner reception before I retired, I've never thought of it like that. But according to my recollection and my choosing not to provide any information are separate issues. It's not possible for me to remember every detail, but the fact that I remember doesn't mean that it's appropriate for me to answer the question. Mr. Dennis Kwok. Mr. Kwok, before you ask your question, I think we are scheduled to finish at 11 for this part. I wouldn't take very long, Chairman. Obviously, Mr. Tong is not willing to answer many questions. Mr. Tong. What is the relationship with the Commissioner, Mr. Liu Xinhua? Well, Mr. Liu is the Commissioner of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs Liaison Office in Hong Kong. He is the highest, the most senior officer from of the Liaison Office. I am the most senior official of important organization in Hong Kong, and we only have a working relationship. We have a working relationship. Other than the contact between the commissioner, the two commissioners, the staff of the liaison office and also the ICAC also had working and also had contacts at a working level. I'd like to remind you, Mr. Tong, when you answered Mr. Paul Chair's question, he did ask you about your relationship with Mr. Liu Xinhua, and your reply was that basically you had a working relationship. I'd like to ask whether you only had a working relationship with Mr. Liu. Did you have any personal, contacts? I understand. Because I wasn't able to, grasp the way the question was put. Mr. Liu Xinhua, the Commissioner of the Ministry of Affairs in Hong Kong. Well, since I need some time to think about this. At the time when Mr. Liu arrived in Hong Kong, that was before I took up the post of Commissioner. So there was more than one department that we had a working relationship, and he was someone that I became acquainted with through that working relationship. You had also contact at a working level. Yes, certainly there have been contacts, including colleagues in other departments. They also had contact at the working level with Mr. Liu. Other than your formal capacity, you have no other relationship with Mr. Liu Xinhua. Including there at occasions when the commissioner participated in functions. It was also has to do with working relationship. People related to those functions. I think we're talking about social functions in relation to that. So, Mr. Tong, could you clarify this? Between yourself and Mr. Liu Xinhua, such contact had all to do with your work. They were all activities, at the working level. The working relationship actually defines the relationship between the two commissioners and the two institutions. We have common friends and colleagues, and these friends and colleagues would attend certain functions and celebrations and social functions, and they would be in contact. Mr. Tong, are you a consultant of the society called the Friends of Mautai? Chairman, I'd like to ask what is relevance of this question to the work of this committee? I think you understand this very soon. Just answer my question. Are you a consultant of the Friends of Mautai? Chairman, I'd like to know what is the relationship between that question and the present inquiry. The member would like me to answer the question before I understand the rationale for the question. If I don't understand the question itself, whether or not he was a consultant is a matter of fact. If you would continue the rest of the question so that he would understand better your question. Mr. Louis Senwa, the Commissioner, is a consultant of the Friends of Mautai. I'd like to know whether or not you are also another consultant of the Friends of Mautai. Sorry, I think Mr. Toh is trying to, correct your mistake. I think this could be a Freudian flip, whether Mr. Kwok is talking about Mautai or whether he's talking about targets. So both Mr. Lui and yourself are consultants of the Friends of Mautai. His answer was yes. I'd like you to say it again. Yes. The answer is yes. And then why is it when I asked you about your relationship with Mr. Louis Senwa, the Commissioner, whether or not it was a working relationship, you kept saying yes. You maintained that you became acquainted with him through your working relationship and how you were involved in entertainment and so on. Why don't you tell us that you're also both consultants of the Friends of Mautai? You know this, right, Mr. Tong? It is exactly because of that. So what I'd like to know is what is the relevance of this question to the inquiry of the committee. Myself, for example, are also the honourable members are members of the Jockey Club. If I were asked about my relationship with the member, I would say this is a relationship between the witness and a member of the committee. I wouldn't say that we are both members of the Jockey Club. Chairman. Mr. Tong, I'd like to know whether you and the Commissioner, Mr. Lui, had both attended activities of the Friends of Mautai. Chairman. Again, I'd like to know what is the relevance of this question to the target of this inquiry. Likewise, at a different level, I'm not sure, and I will not deny that myself and some of the honourable members, let's say we have a dinner, attended the same dinner on the 5th floor. I think if we don't understand the relevance of this question to the inquiry, I think Mr. Trump would be the only one, because we've kept asking questions about whether in the year 2010 and 2011 and also 2009, we're talking about certain entertainment activities. He refused to answer the question earlier. But the point is that the relationship between himself and Mr. Lui, the Commissioner, is directly related to the scope of our inquiry. I asked him what was his relationship with Mr. Lui. He talked about, working relationship, and that they would meet each other, in official functions. And I put it to him that he was a friend of consultant of the Friends of Malta. He said yes, but why didn't he say this earlier? Perhaps there have been many such occasions. So I'd like to ask Mr. Tong whether they have both attended functions or social functions of the Friends of Malta. That's my question. He's already given the answer that he's not sure, he cannot deny or agree whether they didn't know whether or not they were both present.
So did you and Commissioner Liu Xinhua attend any social functions of the Friends of Malta? So at the same function of Friends of Malta did you attend, both of you, from your recollection? Now, I couldn't recall which year I attended such function, but I would not rule out the possibility. Perhaps I could put it that way, because I couldn't recall exactly when we might have met on those occasions. Well, it's 11 now. Can you please come to your key question, because we have to wrap up this session. So your relationship with Commissioner Liu Xinhua was not just confined to work, right? At social functions, including functions of the Friends of Malta, you were related to him in some way, right? Mr. Chairman, member maybe didn't hear me. I said that through work we came to know each other, and even as functional functions there was contact. Friends of Malta, was it related to work? Is that what you're saying? Mr. Tong? Two separate issues there, Mr. Chairman. I said I came to know people through work. And then at social functions, I might have a chance to meet these people. Okay, that's the end of the session. Mr. Tong, thank you for coming to the hearing. If there's a need, of course, I hope Mr. Tong, if the Select Committee believes there is a need, I hope Mr. Tong, we hope you will agree to come again. But that's the end of the session. Thank you, Mr. Tong. You may now leave, Mr. Tong. Mr. Chairman, at the last meeting, or last hearing, when I came, at the end of the hearing, I asked to speak. At that time, you asked me whether I insisted on speaking. And now, Mr. Chairman, can I ask if I'd be allowed time to speak? To save time. Of course, I know members' time is invaluable. But if, Mr. Chairman, there is no absolute need to speak, then I will withdraw this request. But what I'm saying is, Mr. Chairman, if you will allow me to speak, I would like to make a statement. But if the chairman does not agree, I would refrain from doing so. Mr. Tong, if you really wish to speak, I will give you time, but please be very concise, because we're supposed to wrap up the session at 11. So it's for you to consider, Mr. Tong. Short it will be. We are going to investigate into something. We are taking evidence here. Mr. Tong is the witness. We asked some questions today. I've joined the queue. I didn't get a chance to ask questions again. If Mr. Tong said he wanted to make a speech to supplement his reply to our questions, then I think it's fine. But if he just wants to make a general statement, then why wouldn't you allow us to keep taking evidence? Even if you allow me 3 minutes, maybe I could ask 2 questions. I don't think we should spend time this way. I I remember in the earlier session, I heard a member ask something that reminded me of something. I might, if he said it reminded him of something, and he said, well, then he wants to supplement his reply. Then I think it's fine. Well, we've ended this session, but Mr. Tong has asked to speak. Of course, the members may still have further questions. So, Mr. Tong, it's for you to consider. Mr. Chairman, if you ask if I insist on speaking, I won't. But if the committee is willing to listen to me speak, then I would like to make a short speech. Now, I think, Mr. Tong, maybe you should consider Mr. To's question. So if you could do without speaking, please consider not speak. In that case, thank you. Then I would just bid the Select Committee farewell. Okay, let's take a break of 5 minutes, and then we'll move on to the second session. In the second session, we will invite the incumbent Commissioner, Mr. Simon Pei, to attend. Thank you.